I received today a request to sign a demand for the immediate resignation of Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. As many of you know, this is probably the second highest profile freshman congressperson behind, what's her name, Ocasio-Cortez, or whatever her name is, Ocasio-Cortez, I guess. Ilhan Omar is the 5th District Congresswoman in Minnesota, and she became a member of Congress in January of this year. She is a Somali American, and she has a bachelor's degree from North Dakota State University. She is a Democrat, farmer labor person from Minnesota, and she is the first Somali American to be elected to the United States Congress. She is also the first naturalized citizen from Africa and the first Somali American elected to the United States Congress. She is one of 2 Muslim women elected to Congress and the first minority woman to serve as a U.S. representative from Minnesota. So there are good and bad things to say about her, right? She is obviously a liberal. She is a progressive. Her agenda has to do with affordable housing, health care, student loan indebtedness forgiveness, protection of child arrivals from on immigrants, the abolition of ICE, and she strongly opposes the immigration policies of the Trump administration. All perfectly understandable given her progressive stance and her election and her representation of parts of Minneapolis in a fairly liberal state, in the most liberal part of a fairly liberal state. So she has caused a great deal of consternation among everyone from the president on down that she made comments about AIPAC, that is the Israeli PAC, the Israeli pro-Israeli group, and about Israeli implications with respect to both Palestinian conflict and the treatment of Palestinians, as well as military campaigns of the Israelis and to the treatment of Palestinian occupied territories, as well as the expansion of the settlements by the Israelis. I think she has criticized all of them, and one of her criticisms that aroused the most consternation was that she challenged some of the people in Congress as to their loyalties and allegiances. Are they first American citizens? Are they first really representatives of Israel? And what are their mixed loyalties? Some of what she said, frankly, including the last thing having to do with mixed loyalties and multiple citizenship, I agree with her. I'm not sure I disagree with her about the student loan debt forgiveness, and I'll tell you why. The last time we had a middle class that was vibrant and growing was when we gave the GI Bill. Now, the GIs earned their right to the GI Bill. It was unquestionably an added bonus for having been involved in one of the most horrendous wars of the last century. But if we don't take care of multi-trillion-dollar student debt, we are going to have the millennials and the X generation both dragging their lives about them for generations, and we will have no middle class. We will have no buyers of the next generation of private homes. We're going to end up having everybody live in apartments, condos, and settlements, and that will not work. But let's go to the heart of this, because some of these folks are clamoring, including the president, who said she should resign. Ilhan Omar, should resign from Congress, or at the very least get out of the Foreign Relations Committee. Apparently, so far, Nancy Pelosi has rejected that request. But there are people throughout the political spectrum, on the Democratic side and on the Republican side, clamoring for her head. to get rid of her, to quiet her, to still her. And I'm going to tell you that I think that is constitutionally abhorrent. Abhorrent. Our amendment for free speech provides that the person has a right to free speech. The current notion about free speech is that, well, we shouldn't have hate speech. No, we shouldn't have hate speech, and we shouldn't be saying things that are not within the norms of everything. We shouldn't have anybody on campuses that doesn't agree, that everybody on campus doesn't agree for. We should have safe places for people in college so that they don't have to think about different kinds of perspectives and points of view. I'm going to tell you, first of all, as it relates to colleges, that's the testing place for people's thoughts and ideas. That's where divergent opinion and differences of ideas ought to be clashing on a full-time basis for people to get some idea of what it is they might really think about, what they might believe, how they juxtapose their own current thoughts with what it is that they might be learning. And it is the last place that should serve as a sanctuary for, quote, safe speech. But more than that, in Congress, we need a divergent and different sort of approach all the way across the spectrum. We need to have people say things that are uncomfortable. The right to free speech is not about having free speech for people who agree with you. It's not about having free speech for the right to be safe, to be secure, to be non-hateful, to be non-resentful. It is none of those. We are entitled to say what it is that's on our mind, even if it's bitter, petulant, angry, hateful, unpleasant, unkind, or absolutely false. Why is it that we feel that way? Well, we feel that way as Americans because it is the stew that truth comes out of, from which truth comes, which is the place for us, the crucible for us, to figure out what it is that we as a nation believe, what it is a majority of us are willing to agree with or disagree with. If hate speech and angry speech and unkind speech and alt speech and fake speech and religiously unpleasant speech are all quelled because we are going to agree as a nation that we must be within the norms, I can tell you right now what is going to happen. What is going to happen is that someone, and you see this on Google and YouTube and Twitter and the rest of these, that if they don't like what you're saying, they are going to quell your speech. Where is the last place that people should be saying Ilhan Omar should be quiet? Where's the last place? It should be within the alt community. And let me tell you what they ought to be saying. Not what they're saying, which drives me absolutely bonkers, as you can tell, but what they ought to be saying. Let me give you a quote that all of us ought to attend. And it is, I disapprove of what you have to say. I disapprove of what you have to say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Now that was attributed to Voltaire. It was actually not said by Voltaire, but it was printed and quoted by a person who went by the pen name of S.G. Talentire, which was the pseudonym for English historian Evelyn Beatrice Hall. And she quoted in her 1906 book what she thought Voltaire meant in the quote that to which she attributed him, even though she stated that he never said it. So let's go back to what it says. Let's go back to the Founding Fathers. Let's go back to the vehement, violent, angry, often challenging speech that our Founding Fathers engaged 200 odd years ago. They accused Jefferson of being a slave owner and sleeping with slaves. Now, it ended up being true, but it was at the time denied. But it was in the papers. There was a lot more truth and a lot more challenge and a lot more threat and across the board 225 years ago or 215 years ago than there is now. And we are being sequestered in truth speak. We are being sequestered in 1984. We are being sequestered in what's going to be okay that the corporate folks and the politicians in power tell us is okay to do. And they are going to criminalize speech that is considered to be hate, that's anti-Semitic, that is challenging, and they are going to encompass a whole range of things that cannot be said. And whether those things are true or false, they are going to prevent us from saying them. So what I would say to you in the alt community, in the conservative community, in the libertarian community, in the democratic, classical Democrat, liberal community, if you don't defend Ilhan Omar's right to say what it is that makes you feel uncomfortable or what you deem to be unpleasant or even angry, hateful, or untrue. If you don't defend her right to say it, you will find yourself constrained from saying what it is that you want to say yourself. We need to defend everybody, whether we agree with them or not, that they have the right to speak, and no more so than on college campuses, and no more so in the political turmoil of our times and of all times from 1776 till today. So I will close out by saying it is time for us to protect the constitutional rights that we all have, whether we like what people do with them or not. Thank you so much for watching. Give a thumbs up if you like it. Give a thumbs up if you don't like it, because I have the right so far to say what I have to say, even if you don't like it. When that ends, you won't have it either. Thanks so much for watching.